Hey everyone, welcome to Brew Talks, presented by Dogfish Head and Lillypad. My name is Justin Kendall, and I am the editor of Brewbound, and we are live from Minneapolis, Minnesota at Target Field, home of the Minnesota professional baseball team. We can't name. I'm joined by my colleague, Zoe Licata. Thanks for being here, Zoe.
Hello, everyone.
This is Zoe's one-year Brewbound anniversary and second CBC.
Yeah, I'm very excited to celebrate with everybody here.
So please give it up for the Brewbound team. My colleague Jess Infante down here, who deserves all the credit for holding it down at Brewbound. Our AV team for putting this together. Our events team, the Boston Beer events team, and bringing us to beautiful Target Field. So give it up for them, please. We got three big conversations for you. We're going to start off talking crypto and NFTs because they're creeping into brewery tap rooms and brewery business, and it's something you all want to know about, and I want to know more about because I don't know that much about it. We're also going to be talking about accelerator programs for upstart breweries through Boston Beer's Brewing the American Dream program and Target's accelerator program. So stick around after a little networking break after this first panel. Then we're going to bring you a third panel on residency programs, one that was really successful in Chicago at Haymarket Brewery. So hang around for that as well. So let's get some thank yous out to our sponsors. Encompass, Scott Laboratories, Reyes Beer Division, Omega Engineering, Vicinity Brew, as well as Spectrum, Eclipse, Brew One, and Azaka from Barthos Groups. We could not do this without them. We could not do this without your support as well. Some of the proceeds of this event is going to the Minnesota Craft Brewers Guild, so give it up for the Guild. So ready or not, Web3 is intersecting with craft breweries. We've got NFTs, we've got crypto and being accepted in tap rooms. And really, there's got to be folks who jump in at the beginning, and we've got two speakers here who are jumping right in head first. We're going to start with Curtis Cummings, the founder and CEO of Switchyard Brewing in Indianapolis. Thanks for being here, Curtis.
Hey, not a problem.
Curtis, Switchyard began accepting cryptocurrency in its tap rooms, I think, last month. So you're going to share a little case study on how that's been going. We also have Daniel Paul Wellendorf, one of the co-founders and head of marketing for Modist Brewing here in Minneapolis. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
So Modist released a beer with an NFT component and augmented reality as well. So you're going to talk about that in a little bit. So before we get started, we got to plug our text line. If you have questions for these guys, hit us up at 617-336-8560. We'll get you some answers. And let's get going with Curtis. Switchyard began accepting crypto payments within its tap room a month ago, as we said. How difficult was it to get set up, and how has it worked out so far?
Yeah, so we had a few headaches getting into it. There's not really a whole lot of support out there right now. Like there's not a 1-800 number you can call and get tech support for setting up Bitcoin in your tap room. But the Bitcoin community, shout out to the Indie Bitcoin Club. Those guys were incredibly helpful and just really forward-thinking, lack of better words, engineers. You know, whether they're engineers by trade or by education, these folks have just really adopted this technology, and you know, they see a similar vision that we do. It's why we're learning just as much as we can. I mean, I can't tell you how many YouTube videos I've watched about cryptocurrency and read white papers, and but it was not easy by any means.
And even if you don't know a lot about crypto, I think most people know that it can be a bit volatile sometimes. So how do you approach crypto and price?
Well, I mean, so our crypto holdings are really set up for for a long-term type investment a strategy. We're not immediately converting those to fiat currency. And for those that don't know, because these are some newer terms, I get it. Fiat currency is basically just any currency that you're used to, like the US dollar is a fiat currency. It's something that's not actually tied to a tangible good, right? Like the US dollar used to be tied to gold, but it's not anymore. The US dollar is really just tied to the strength of our economy and the strength of our military force. So really, the way we see it is these are not a lot of transactions, right? Like the first day we did it, we didn't, it's essentially the same as like taking a check in the tap room, right? Like last year we accepted 2 checks, paper checks, and we've already done 10 times that in cryptocurrency transactions within a month. So.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
we were talking before this about cash drawers. I mean, do both of you even have that many cash drawers anymore?
We still have cash drawers, whether or not they're used. I think 95% of our transactions are digital now.
We just pulled our, we started the brewery. I'll never forget this. So when we first started the brewery 4 years ago, I forgot to put change in the cash drawers. So I had to run over to the ATM and like withdraw money from my like personal account to like put $250 in each one of the drawers. And that was 4 drawers is what we started with. And we're down to just 1 now. Yeah.
I think a lot of people are probably going through that as well. Dan, has Modist, Daniel, I should say, has Modist accepted crypto payments, or are you guys considering accepting crypto payments in your brewery?
It's not on our radar right now, but that I'm looking forward to the opportunity to learn from Curtis and his experience, because the thing that I'll bring to this conversation is just kind of what our entrance into this crypto world and the blockchain world, like what it meant to us. And I even though we got a lot of flack for what we did, which we'll talk about, I still believe that crypto is the future. So if you're not considering it, then I feel like you're just going to be kind of behind the wave when it all kind of hits.
So I think I'll piggyback off that, because a stat that I pulled up that I think is really interesting is the estimate of cryptocurrency users in the United States was 11% as of May 2021. A good comparison of that would be between smartphone adoption and cryptocurrency adoption. That in the span of 8 years, smartphone adoption went from 11% to 80%. So, we are still super early in the crypto game right now. You talked about Web 3.0, and I think that for those of you that are, older than, like, if you were born 1987 or earlier, you probably remember like Web 1.0, which was, you come home, you hop on the computer, you're on like a dial-up bulletin board or something, and it was a very one-way means of communication. Then we had Web 2.0, where we had, I guess Web 1.0 would even throw AOL, CompuServe, those things into that. But Web 2.0 is what we understand now, right? It's more of a two-way communication. There's a lot more interactivity. There's the cloud, like every type of cloud service that's out there. And now we're talking Web 3.0. And it's hard for people to imagine what that is because we are so early into it. But for us to adopt it this early, for you guys to adopt it this early, I mean, we're kind of trailblazers in a sense for it.
And there's a lot of like proof that this is a thing, right? 30% of millennials have a crypto wallet. That's like, almost one. I'm no mathematologist, but that's one out of
and
every
over
30.
half of the Super Bowl commercials this year were the big game. I'm not sure if we're legally allowed to say that. Oops, sorry if I got you guys in trouble.
If you look historically, anytime there's been like so much brain power and money being thrown at a thing, it's going to be a thing. It's the same thing with social media. I feel like this is 2010.
Well, and we can talk about like Bitcoin versus Dogecoin versus Ethereum, Litecoin, right? But I think we'll all remember, like, if you're old enough, you'll remember, like, back in the day, there was the HD DVD versus Blu-ray, right? And only one technology, like, they essentially did the same thing, but only one technology actually ended up superior, and that was Blu-ray. That's what we all know. And that's what I think about Bitcoin. I think that specific methodology is actually going to reign superior and is going to, You know, I mean, if you ask anyone at any age range, if you say, hey, what's Bitcoin? Probably, I mean, just a raise of hands from the audience. I mean, you came to a crypto podcast, but for just a raise of hands, who has heard of Bitcoin?
Okay, so anyone watching our live stream, that is basically everyone in this room.
Right, but that's my point, right?
Yeah, and Daniel, you could give us like an example of how crypto is being used because you've personally had some history with it and sports betting.
Yeah, so maybe not, just me and some friends, maybe some friends. We used to, like back in 2010, used to move money through crypto. And it was like, the value of crypto back then was because it could move money internationally without changing a currency. You move it into a cryptocurrency, and then that, money can get moved anywhere in the world. And this is like, something that is still valuable to this day. Like most of the money sent internationally, or I think it's almost half of the money sent internationally, is sent through crypto these days because of you save on fees. You don't have to work with these big centralized banks that are trying to ding you all of the time. So back then, it had the same benefit, but it was like so volatile that literally you would move within seconds. You would move it from one account, US dollars, crypto, and then to another account. The whole transaction would take 2 to 3 minutes. And that transaction would move hundreds of dollars, one way or another. And so it's just like sometimes you move it and you're like, sweet, like my money just grew. And then sometimes you're like, damn, that was expensive. So it's kind of exciting that it's still considered volatile, but compared to 2010, it's pretty stable.
I want to stick with you, Daniel. Modist released Hex Code, a beer that featured augmented reality and an NFT component. Tell us a little bit about that experience, because I think that you sort of hinted at a little bit of blowback for that. Tell us what that was like. Tell us like how that beer performed and how that all worked.
Sure. So Hex Code was a project. It was a collaboration with a local virtual reality laboratory called REM5. And for those who are out of town, go to REM5. It's so dope. It's like a bowling alley, but it's VR. So you get a pod, and then you can play whatever games, and it's so cool. So they were launching this new exhibit called Quantum Mirror, which is an infinity mirror it's an artist named Adrian Stein. He's from Guatemala, but now Chicago-based, and they were launching this thing called Quantum Mirror, and they wanted like a really cool way to advertise the Quantum Mirror exhibit. So Adrian, the artist, is also a digital artist. And we have done projects with REM5 before. We've had, labels that are entirely designed in virtual reality, and then we like turn them into two-dimensional printing and put them on a beer can. And then you can, you can go into virtual reality and play with the label at REM5. So we had a relationship with them. And then we kind of like stumbled on Hex Code and like, okay, well, so for this, it's basically an advertisement for this exhibit. What are we going to do? And we stumbled on the idea of having an augmented reality option. So we built an Instagram filter. So if you scan it, the front of the can label is just a QR code. If you scan it, it takes you to Instagram, and there's basically like a digital person that pops out of the can and spins around. They're meditating, and it was just kind of like a fun, cute thing to be like, oh, that's cool. But there was also an NFT attached to it. So there's an entry raffle format. If you entered the raffle, you could have a chance to win this NFT, which was just a digital art piece from Adrian that you could enter for free to win. But the fact that there is an NFT attached to it, people didn't like it. Because there's a lot of like bad juju around NFTs right now because of the environmental aspect of how energy intensive the world of crypto is. And so we were kind of blindsided by how many people we thought, we kind of went in naively thinking, okay, we're just doing this cool thing. It's got all these layers. It's really cool. And we put it out thinking, wow, people are going to be really excited about this. And then here they come. The comments are like, oh, God. We're like, did we just kill the planet? I think we just killed the planet. Oh my God, we just killed the planet. And so that's just kind of how it went. And then in that moment, we're just like, okay, so now what do we do? And so we could talk more about that, but basically we didn't discard the project. We could have given up, but the NFT hadn't been minted yet. And excuse me, this is like getting into layers that aren't easily digestible. It hadn't been minted yet, so we basically minted it on a cryptocurrency that was more eco-friendly to appease people who had a problem with us. Because we also have a reputation of being an environmentally friendly brewery, and so people were just like, what?
I think it's interesting because we also received a little bit of kickback, some negative comments regarding it. And I mean, this is partially why we named a chief crypto officer of our company, because one of our part-time staff members who is a full-time engineer, and he has been just the spearhead of this. And I went to Michael and I said, Michael, like, what are your thoughts on this? And he wrote up like an entire what I would consider a college level report over Bitcoin and the environment, and the type of, we're using Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, not straight Bitcoin, so not layer 1 Bitcoin. And the fact of the matter is that like with Bitcoin transactions specifically, if someone's going to be mining Bitcoin, it's actually really cost prohibitive to mine Bitcoin at current power like cost, right? Like per kilowatt. You need to implement some sort of sustainable power because otherwise you're basically upside down. It's just not a good business decision.
I mean, based on the consumer feedback that you got for that project, Daniel, would you do it again? Like, what did you learn from that, and do you see it as NFTs still being beneficial?
I would. I think that, the more I learn about NFTs and crypto, the more I feel like if people understand the value of it, which I don't think that there's no single source, and that's like part of the appeal, that is like advertising how NFTs or cryptocurrency or whatever could be a good thing for people. If people understand the value, then the conversation is going to change from like what we're doing wrong to like how we can make this better. So I think that there will be, as years go by, there will be more investment, in the idea that this is like a good thing. And so if, maybe we could have spent more time talk about the benefits of this project and how it was good for the artist. I mean, like, we work with a lot of artists. We're a brewery. We want to pay artists. We want to see artists be successful. That's like a big part of our philosophy. And so for the artist, at the artist level, NFTs are really important. Instead of like putting creating a music and putting it on Spotify and getting fucking pennies. Sorry, can I swear? I don't know.
It's fine.
I think you can.
Like you can mint it in this digital world and then have rights to it and distribute it how you see fit. And so for the artist, it's like a groundbreaking thing. So that's kind of where we were, and it's like, oh, this is a great thing for Adrian, like thinking about the individual, but then also musicians and artists everywhere, it's good for them. And that idea can be scaled to countless industries.
I think if you want to if we're going to dig down a little bit further on the energy usage, no one's really questioning how much energy Visa, MasterCard, Discover, Amex are using to process hundreds of thousands of transactions per second all across the globe. I mean, that's got to take a lot of energy to do that too, I imagine. Now, I don't know how much it is. I don't think anybody studied it, but...
Right. I think that I went down that path when people started, people were commenting on Twitter or Instagram. I'm like, well, how many, my first thought is like, how much energy did that cost? There's no way of knowing. And so in that moment, do I want to get into a pissing match with this person who has a problem, based on, maybe they've done the research, maybe they haven't. But I don't feel personally responsible for validating their research or where they're coming from. I just want to make sure that one of our customers feels heard. And it's like, hey, I get you. This is a concern. Thank you for bringing it up. We're going to look into it, and we're just going to do what we can with this project. and we were able to find a cryptocurrency that fit our values as an environmentally friendly company. We were able to make sure that it was carbon neutral to the ability to what we could trace, and then also to that individual to say like, hey, we feel you. This is a big deal. Let's make sure that we're all thinking through everything together. And
Well, I mean, I wonder back in the day when we were actually mining gold, silver. I mean, I'm sure we still are, I guess. I don't know how much gold's left in the world right now. But that uses a lot of energy too, right? Like not only manpower, but it also uses, fossil fuels. It's, we're disrupting the earth. I mean, there's a lot to be concerned with there too.
So we've got an audience question here for you, Curtis. You stated that the value of you stated Bitcoin is more stable now. The asker of this question says the value of Bitcoin has lost 18% in the last month. Does the cool factor of accepting crypto outweigh the foregone margins?
No, not at all for me. I mean, again, we're looking at the long term. Like, we're looking at the 10-year plan, not the, we're not converting this over and making a quick buck. That's not what we're doing. I mean, literally every single crypto transaction that we have goes through our own node that we host, and it's a full node, so it holds the entire blockchain. And as soon as the transaction clears, it goes. We dump it onto a cold wallet, onto a ledger that just sits in a safe deposit box, coincidentally, at a bank.
And for those who do have questions, the text number is 617-336-8560. There's another one here that wants to, can you go a little deeper on what it means to mine Bitcoin? Break it down for them as quickly as you can.
Well, when you mine one Bitcoin, it takes a lot of, most people use graphics cards, like really high-end graphics cards, and they are basically, computers are working out really difficult equations. And you just sit and let it do its thing, and it takes a while. And so that's how you end up mining one Bitcoin, and that goes into the blockchain for people to transact.
On that, Curtis, you guys also created a brewery treasury, which is how you take in all of those crypto payments. How do you view the payments that are in that treasury, and can you explain like how that all works?
Yeah, again, I mean, we for the treasury, I mean, this is, for any corporation or LLC, I mean, you're either going to open a savings account, which garners like 0.025% interest, or you're going to open up, you're going to invest your money into the stock market. I mean, this is just basically we're side streaming a few transactions per month, and it's just sitting there, and either it's going to lose value or it's going to gain value, but either way, we're riding it. And I think that we're optimistic to think that it's going to gain value. Again, we think that there's going to be more. We are in Bloomington, Indiana, so it's actually home of IU. And anytime you go to an IU basketball game, there are companies spending so much money advertising at these college basketball games because they know their market, right? These are crypto wallet companies advertising at college basketball games. I mean, you're not just going to do that if there's not a potential there.
I think a lot of people might be sitting there and a little bit skeptical of these things and unsure of, anytime there's new tech, it can be intimidating. So I'll start with you, Daniel. Whether it's setting up crypto payments or launching an NFT beer with augmented reality, what advice do you have for folks who are maybe a little hesitant to jump in? Would you say, jump in? Would you say, stay back? What do you think at this point?
I feel like you shouldn't ever do anything unless you really believe in it. That's a broad statement. But one of the missteps that we had is that we really believed in this project, but I had yet to know if I really believed in NFTs. And so all of a sudden, someone who doesn't believe in NFTs, who passionately is on that side of things, challenges you, you get slapped in the face. You're like, okay, well, I naively entered a thing that I didn't have, enough legs to stand on. And so I would say there's a lot of reason to believe that the crypto world is the future. There's a lot of reasons to believe that decentralizing the internet is a good thing. It's like, there's a power to the people element to it that could, no one loves how much power is consolidated in Web 2.0. I mean, you have a couple players that determine everything. And so the next level of that would be more power to people like you and me and everyone. But those are all like kind of beliefs that I've kind of, come to find as I explored because I was getting challenged. So if you don't firmly have those beliefs, just lay off. Let other people do it. Let people like me just go and fuck up and then learn about it.
Curtis, you're clearly passionate about this. So what would you say to those folks?
I love that you brought up beliefs because I think beliefs in business is really important. Any major decision that we make at Switchyard, we kind of look at our guiding principles of our business and we see if it really aligns with those guiding principles. And you're right, like if it doesn't, then you probably shouldn't do it. And, we could apply this to a lot of different things, whether it's opening another tap room or if it's, hey, it could be something as simple as, hey, should we start running specials during the week? You kind of have to look at every decision and go back to it. But, it's my belief that this is going to be the future. I feel like I'm validated in that belief because I see larger corporations like Starbucks, beginning to accept crypto, specifically Bitcoin, in different countries, and they're piloting it at different stores throughout the United States. Other major retailers doing the same thing, and Starbucks is a great example of that because like the Starbucks app, you load money into the wallet, and people a lot of times don't even think of Starbucks as a coffee company anymore. They're actually a bank because of how much money is loaded into their app. That essentially is a digital currency, right? Because that company realized that their per transaction charge was like $4 or $5 per swipe. You're getting 2.7% plus 30 cents or whatever it is. It makes way more sense for a customer to load $50. That way you only have one time transaction fee, and then they come back. Not only does it build brand loyalty, but then it also is less transaction fees, and you save a ton, right? So the advice part.
And you can pass those savings on to your
exactly.
To your people.
Yeah. So the advice part is before anyone considers getting into this, you have to be super knowledgeable about what you're doing because it is so easy to screw up, and you can lose a lot of money really fast. It's just like any other emerging technology, there are bad actors out there that will just take you for a run, and so definitely partner up with your local university, get someone you trust. Your keys, your crypto. That's what I would advise.
As we're wrapping up our conversation here, we all kind of know what the state of craft beer looks like right now. Everyone's looking, where can we get new consumers? Based on your experiences, do you see this as being an effective way to bring in more drinkers? Are you seeing new consumers coming in?
Love this question. Thank you. Because I recently, so for a few years now, I've been using this app called Brewery Explorer. And they just updated the app. And it's really neat that we're having this conversation now because in the new app, basically what they've done is they've injected, they've used the Ethereum blockchain actually integrated into the app. So when a consumer goes and they check into a brewery, now it's geotagged. You have to be literally in the brewery or very, very close. You have to check in, and when you check in, you get a bottle cap, and a bottle cap is essentially a form of currency, and that goes to your account in the app. Well, once you collect so many bottle caps, now we're actually the first brewery. I'll actually send you the contact information because I think you guys would love this too. We're the first brewery that when you go to the brewery and you check in after you get so many bottle caps, you can redeem it for things like a koozie or a free flight, or if depending upon state law what it allows, right? But it's essentially a digital gift card, and just like our crypto, you can edit your point of sale to where you edit and pay using whatever payment method it is. But I think that's important to also kind of think about is, PayPal, they're adopting crypto. I think you're going to start seeing native integrations within point of sale systems. I think that's when you're really going to start seeing a lot of momentum. And I just read that even Apple they recently acquired a company to allow native crypto payments using the touchless Apple Pay. Think about that. That immediately gains access to how many millions of users, basically overnight. So.
And do you see new consumers coming to you guys as well at Modist from this?
I don't know. Because of hex code? I don't know. The other thing that's part of the story is that hex code was a pineapple coconut marshmallow lager, and so we we didn't know if people liked it, and I don't know. We put too many variables in that beer, and whatever. So I don't see very many return hex code customers. No. But as far as the metaverse as a whole, having a role in breweries' fortune, absolutely. I think the point of sale crypto transactions, that's going to be determined from the big players, whether or not they have enough buy-in to make it convenient. Because right now, to accept a crypto payment, I wouldn't consider convenient versus Visa or MasterCard. They've been in the game a long time. It's really fast. It's really easy. That's going to be like that for a while.
So what's kind of cool is the Cash App actually just the same month that we launched accepting Bitcoin in our taproom, the Cash App actually natively now accepts Bitcoin over Lightning Network, which is what we're accepting. So, think about how many users the Cash App has, right? So it is, it's pretty dang quick, and I think, kind of like you alluded to, the more integrations we see. But I think next 5 years, I don't know.
Yeah, all crypto.
Maybe we'll be watching this in the next 5 years, 5 years from now, and being like, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah, we're gonna look smart. I've never looked.
I think that's the best place to end
before.
that. Is hopefully you all are going to look smart on the end of this, or you're going to be into a new frontier, whether that's the metaverse or wherever. But for now, we're going to hit the beer stand and get some more beers, get some food. If you're watching at home, hang out, watch the live, stay tuned on the live stream. We've got 2 more panels coming up. Next one on Accelerator programs. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
If you're an alcohol supplier, you have one goal: to sell more liquid. You work hard to train your team how to sell your product, while the sales manager sets high goals for revenue and product placements. Your craft deserves more than the perfect sales pitch. Executing an efficient field strategy is a top priority to reach expected growth and margins. Get ready to arm your sales team with not only your product knowledge, but the ability to execute a field strategy that will keep you ahead of your competition. Lillypad was built to elevate sales team performance, giving your team the tools and resources they need, while providing you visibility into their day-to-day activity. Meet Peter Parker, sales rep. He's passionate about your product. With a little more organization and a view into market data, he can get more commitments for product placements and see them through. The Lillypad map highlights customers and prospects for Peter, where they are located, which to visit, and which need follow-up, so he can plan his day efficiently and focus on the most profitable opportunities. Peter is well prepared when he arrives at a customer location. Using Lillypad's account profile feature, Peter knows who he needs to talk to, the location's sales history, status of product commitments and placements, and which distributors they use to purchase alcohol. While Peter is visiting his customer, he can suggest the right products he knows will sell based on market data insights. Today, Peter easily lands a tap handle commitment and will track the fulfillment process using Lillypad. He can also log his visit notes into the profile where he and his manager can easily analyze progress by account, brand, and SKU. Peter had a successful week, and tracking the progress of his placements has never been easier. Lillypad automates time-consuming processes, helping Peter make the most of every route and every visit. Your number one priority is to sell more liquid. Visit us today at lillypad.co and see what Lillypad can do for your business.
Hey everyone, we hope you're enjoying our Brew Talks event here live in Minneapolis during the Craft Brewers Conference. Brew Talks is brought to you by Dogfish Head and Lillypad. My name is Justin Kindle and I'm the editor of Brewbound, and I'm here today with a special presenting sponsor interview. Joining me right now from Lillypad is Micah Overton, a solution sales executive. Thanks for being here, Micah.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we're psyched to have you joining us. We're psyched that we've got this partnership with Lillypad for Brew Talks. Let's just kind of take this back to the beginning. For starters, for those who are unfamiliar with Lillypad, what is Lillypad? Break it down for us.
Yeah, definitely. So Lillypad is a CRM solution that specializes with more of the BevAlc industry. So lots of different, aspects there. It could be spirits, RTDs. I mean, we even have some coffee clients, and of course beer, which is why we're talking about CBC.
Let's break down some of the functionalities of the customer relations management software that make it a specific tool for BevAlc companies.
Yeah, great point. So there's a couple of features that really drive those functionalities to be more BevAlc specific. Something like our placement funnel feature, the abilities to integrate with your third-party distributor and wholesaler data. Also, it's setting up, specific KPIs and goals around, hey, we need to accomplish these things within the industry. So let's make sure we tailor those KPIs and goals to capture those on and off-premise visits, distributor ride with. So you can see the tailor in the you can see the customization there is truly endless for people in BevAlc.
Now, you've hit on some of the things that sort of separate Lillypad from other products or CRMs out there in the space, but let's go a little bit deeper. Give us some of those that sort of make Lillypad, the CRM to go with.
Yeah, so I think it all starts with just that day in life of a rep. It's the easy to use. It's the interface. I mean, you're waking up with it. You're going to bed with it. My wife hated that I went to bed with Lillypad every day. but it happened. It was part of my day to day, right? So I think it's the usability and the UI and the experience that everyone's getting from that day in, day out. But then it goes just right into the placement funnel feature is probably one of my favorite features. We can actually take verbal commitments. So as a rep going into an on-premise or off-premise place, we're really just trying to leverage these brands and relationships. So our retailers, and 3 tiers, of course, our retailers get with those wholesalers and they place those orders. A rep normally just is like, okay, I'll follow up in a couple of weeks and check the shelf, or I'll wait for my wholesaler to provide me with some sort of Excel sheet that I have to digest and see, did that actual liquid get delivered to the retailer? And what the placement funnel feature does is it takes that verbal commitment right in the palm of your hand, right in your phone, and you just nurture it. And as we digest depletion data, we'll show you when those things have been fulfilled. So you can in real time say, hey, I need to do an activation. I need to do a staff training. Well, now that you brought in the liquid, let's get a display built. Or it's the opposite of that. Nothing's happened in 20 days and you're kind of like, what's going on? And these little alerts are kind of telling you, hey, go follow up with the client, understand why that liquid didn't get delivered, and then problem solve around that.
That's just one great example. We all know that relationships with wholesalers are so important to suppliers. So how can Lillypad sort of help, make those relationships even better?
Yeah, I come from the space as a rep that worked out of some pretty big wholesalers here in the Florida market. And the biggest pain point was, one, for a rep, it's writing that wins and loss email. It's breaking down your week and doing a brain dump onto an Excel file. That's great and all. It takes time for me selling to do that. And then I share it with a wholesaler that's also getting probably 50 more of those emails from other supplier reps in the space. So it's very tough to stay like top of mind. But one thing that we did at Lillypad is we said, well, you're already going through your day to day, you're logging in your placements, you're telling your team and everyone logging, like, these are the activities and tasks I've accomplished and the retailers that I've touched, or even distributor ride whiffs I've done, the activations I've done. So we created a recap section where you can just click 3 buttons. It takes 10 seconds to load. And that's literally going to summarize everything you've done within a specific market over a specific date range. Now it's up to you to just align with your wholesaler, say, hey, Mr. or Miss Manager, we have this cool functionality, send it over. And what's really cool is even on a rep level, a distributor rep can filter down that report by their own name. So they can see, oh, you did 58 visits in this market. That's fantastic. But what did you do in Rick's market? And Rick can go down and say, oh, you did 4 visits. I have a sign request. And you have 2 placements that you put in my territory. I'll make sure you get on it. It's non-intrusive. It's very easy to digest. And it's very simple for, again, a rep to go ahead and run it and get back out into the streets and start selling.
That's what everybody wants, right? They want
That's
the reps back, keep everything moving along.
Absolutely. Yeah. The less time we spend doing kind of those admin things, the more we can get in front and build those relationships with, again, the wholesaler and our retailer partners.
Lillypad was acquired by FinTech about 3 years ago. How has that partnership helped accelerate what Lillypad can do?
Yeah, definitely. So we always have our ear to the ground. We always want to evolve. But of course, when you're a startup, there's only so much bandwidth and things you can really get done with that kind of system. So when we did get acquired, Lillypad was really excited about that acquisition because there does become like a funding behind it where we can start growing a team and start listening to our clients and understand like, hey, we need these things. We need these functionalities. We would love it if you could make those. So now with that backing behind FinTech, we have a very long roadmap over the next year. We'll be releasing a Lillypad 2.1 in the next month or so. And then we will have a Lillypad 3.0 being released sometime over the next year. So a lot of great things, but again, it wouldn't be really possible without that acquisition of FinTech.
Nice. I know selfishly at Brewbound, we enjoy doing or watching the webinars that FinTech puts on with Lester Jones from the National Beer Wholesalers Association. I think those are fantastic. So,
yeah, so we sit on a lot of data being a payments company. And then we've also been working on other acquisitions at FinTech as well to come up with like more of a suite of products that integrate with data. 10 years ago, data was very much just getting a wholesale report. But what it is today, it's, Armadillo and IRI insights or Nielsen data, it's marketing dollar spends data, it's stitching data, and it's all these things that FinTech is looking to solve those problems for.
So we've talked a lot about what Lillypad is, what it can do for folks out there, but I want to know, who are some of the clients that you guys are looking with? What's the demographics of a brewery or beverage alcohol supplier that you guys are looking to partner with?
Yeah, so we actually work with really anyone in that BevAlc space. It doesn't matter if you're just trying to get a sales team under you and just be that local hero that's only working out of a specific county or maybe even a state. It could be a national conglomerate. It could be an international conglomerate. We really cater to everyone, and I think that's the biggest, pro, or one of the biggest pros of Lillypad. It's the customization and the ability to grow with the application. You can have an out-of-the-box feature in Lillypad where it just kind of gets you out there, log those on and off-premise visits, account universe, just get out there, start logging those notes. But as you grow and you use a product like Lillypad, we want to see those sales grow, which in turn should bring more people into the company. In turn, helps us sell more liquid, and then you grow and grow and grow with Lillypad.
That's awesome. Micah, this has been fantastic. We know you're going to be hanging out with us at CBC, at Brew Talks, but how can folks connect with you either at the actual CBC event or, for those who didn't make it and are watching this on our live stream, how can they connect with you otherwise?
Yeah, so you can always submit like demo requests through lilypad.co. Just right to the website. I'll be the guy responding to those demos, so you'll get some time there. But also you can find my goofy picture on LinkedIn. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, so that would be best. Or just moverton@fintech.com would be another great way. But yeah, we'll be at CBC. We'll be at the Target Field. We'll be all over Minneapolis. So let's get some time on the calendars. Let's get some drinks and hang out and make the best of getting back out there.
Fantastic. Go find him. Thanks for the time, Micah.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. And now back to our Brew Talks presentations.
Brew Talks, presented by Dogfish Head and Lillypad. I'm Justin Fonte, Brewbound Managing Editor, joined by my colleague, Editor Justin Kendall. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. And we've got a great panel for you guys. Before we kick off our second panel of the day, I do just want to thank all of our sponsors. We couldn't do this without them. Vicinity Brew, Scott Laboratories, Omega Engineering, and Compass. Brew One, Azaka, Spectrum, and Eclipse, brought to you by the Barth Haas Group, and the Ray's Beer Division. So let's kick things off. This is a really exciting conversation that I have a strong personal connection to that I'm sure we'll talk about. But for startup breweries, knowing who to ask questions of, and even the questions to ask, isn't always clear. Often you don't even know what you don't know. So the pandemic, combined with supply chain and inflationary headwinds, have created added barriers to the industry, which were already even higher for women and entrepreneurs of color. Opportunities within the brewing industry aren't always equal for these folks whose access to credit and capital can be challenging. However, the good news is that there are programs aimed at helping upstarts navigate the business, and we are going to talk all about it. So joining us today are Mike Persick, Target's Senior Director, Divisional Merchandising Manager for Adult Beverages. Mike, you have quite the title.
I sure do.
Target operates Takeoff, which is an accelerator program aimed at more mature food and beverage companies, as well as Forward Founders, which is open to earlier stage companies. So we're going to talk all about that. Mike, thank you so much for being here. We also have my friend and former colleague, Jennifer Glanville, Boston Beer Company's Director of Partnerships, who oversees the Brewing the American Dream initiative. It's a program that's now in its 14th year that is aimed at helping entrepreneurs in food and beverage navigate access to capital and also a lot of mentoring opportunities. And we also have with us for the first time, Tim and Dolly Parker, the founders of Chula Vista Brewery, and they are prior winners of a Brewing the American Dream Craft Brewer Experience-ship, who navigated all the ropes and are now in the expansion phase. So they're here to tell us all about their experiences. Hi, Tim and Dolly. How are you guys?
I'm good.
I'm happy to be here.
So glad you're here. And for everybody both in the room and watching at home, if you have questions for these guys, we will do our best to get you some answers. Feel free to shoot text messages to 617-336-8560. That is 617-336-8560. So, as we just discussed a little bit, accelerator programs offer access to mentors with a variety of experience. And a lot of times, entrepreneurs don't know who to turn to for answers or even the right questions to ask. So, Mike and Jennifer, tell us about how your respective programs build out the mentorship component of the program.
Sure. Thank you. So, when Jim Koch started Samuel Adams, almost 40 years ago, there were two things he didn't have access to: capital and coaching. So 14 years ago, we launched Brewing the American Dream with, obviously, the capital is incredibly important. You can't start your business without capital. More valuable is the mentoring, and that was a huge part of our program. So we started the program with that as a core pillar, and we have a variety of different ways we can provide that through speed coaching events, through pitch room events, and one-on-one mentoring. And I think, you made the point, you don't know what you don't know. I remember Jim Koch telling a story that he didn't know how to do payroll. And he said, well, what do you do? Who does that? And they were like, well, you can go through HR. He's like, I don't have HR, right? So there are so many things where you don't know, and if you get the right mentor or mentorship program, that can really help you. And it also gives people to be along with your journey and to really help with that. So it's really important, and that's really one of the core pillars of our program.
Mike, how does it work at Target?
That's great. Similar, we're very excited about the Target Accelerators program, and targetaccelerators.com has a bunch of resources. I'll talk about the program more specifically, but a bunch of great resources out there for a brewery or a company that's kind of in the earlier phases of figuring some of those things out. Because I think a lot of times finding those resources like HR and things of that nature can be a little bit daunting. So you alluded to, we have two different programs within Target Accelerators. And I'll talk about the programs because they're very similar. Really, the big difference is what stage the company's in. So Target Takeoff is for a more mature company, kind of ready to scale and do bigger things from where they're at. And then the Forward program is earlier stage, so trying to figure out. It's similar to how you talked about the mentor program. That's a big part of the program. So 8-week, really immersive program with tons of resources, really to look at the business in all facets. So everything from marketing to brand positioning to pricing to supply chain. So really helping the brands and helping the startup companies think through all the facets of the business and what needs to be true to take some of those next steps.
Jennifer just mentioned that Brewing the American Dream is in its 14th year. How has the program evolved in the entrepreneurs that it's looking for?
Yeah, when we launched in 2008, it was just after the financial crisis. So we had a lot of folks who had either lost their jobs or wanted to follow their passion. So we had a lot of startup type of business. So that's great, and we still have that. But one thing that we've seen over the years, and we've evolved, and especially over the last 2 years, was how do we identify different barriers? So we know that, for example, female food and bev entrepreneurs and brewers or wannabe brewery owners, they have a different barrier than somebody else, right? So we've been able to identify some of those barriers and really customize a lot of that programming so we can really help them. We have 63% of the entrepreneurs in our program are female, and 76% are BIPOC. So we know that, part of the loan issue was around traditional banks not wanting to lend to breweries. We know that, and we know that they can. Part of that coaching is to help with that. How do we make sure that people are getting the right amount of capital too? So really helping to evolve that. And then also just keeping up with different trends. I think 14 years ago was a lot different than today. Today, there's a lot of examples of successful taprooms and breweries that have opened. Not everybody is going to be able to go nationwide at all, or let alone, the dreams of having it the first year. So how can we help coach and mentor that so that they can start their business and grow it in time? And then we also launched our experience-ship program. So we're in our 9th year of that, and that's specific for brewers. We'll be launching in June, so keep your eyes out. And that's how we met Tim and Dolly as part of our experience-ship program, where you're provided, once you're in the family, you're in the family. So it's a lifetime of coaching and mentoring on any topics. And what's really interesting is we'll get questions now from brewers who have been on our program that are sort of alumni, where instead of like, hey, I want to talk to someone about staffing, they're like, hey, do you have an electrical engineer I can talk to, right? So we know that the business needs are evolving too as that, so we're able to provide that.
So Tim and Dolly, what were some of the roadblocks and challenges that you guys faced in the early days of Chula Vista?
It's getting funding. So for us, it worked out because we signed up for the Brewing American Dream. In San Diego, they call it ASEAN, but now they call it Necessity. So then we got a bunch of coaching. We did get the grant. The grant helped us actually get a bigger loan. But with the coaching, you get to meet, all right, how do you figure out how to get the funding? So a lot of times the bigger banks don't want to fund people like me and Dolly, who are both black and brown. So for us, we found out through the coaching that we probably need to go to our local neighborhood banks who typically cater to your community in the first place. So we went to the local neighborhood bank, and without question, as soon as we walked through the door, they was like, oh, we've been needing this forever. And they were basically trying to figure out more ways to give us more money. So, but it's like you say, you don't know what you don't know. So it's not until you talk to the right people who point you in the right direction where you find out that you do have access. You just got to figure out how to get to it.
Mike, I want to focus in a little bit on both of your programs. Have you had a lot of BevAlc companies apply to be in those programs? And if not, how can we get more in them?
We have not had a BevAlc company go through it yet. We have a similar program on the technology side inside of Target, a tech upstart kind of accelerator program. And I have a couple partners that we're still doing business with today that have come through that, which is super exciting. But BevAlc is a priority category for this season's applications. Already seen some come through for that, so hope to see more and more from that.
What are some things that you're really looking for in those companies?
Yeah, so for us in BevAlc, for Target's business, our strategy, we really want to be curated and differentiated and on trend, similar to what I heard Jennifer talk about. Our commitments, Target's commitments to elevating female and black-owned businesses is a very strong commitment from the company. So whether it's through accelerator programs like that meet some of those other criteria, or just working out and reaching out directly with the team and working with us to do some of that coaching, some of that training, some of that guiding of, is the product ready? Is it ready for retail yet? Is it ready for retail on what scale? And really working with teams to set up for success. I think one of the things where it doesn't work well is if either partner takes a step in the time we're not ready for whatever reason. So it's really doing all that diligence and working through the plan to make sure supply chain, to make sure all the different parts of running successful business need to be there.
So Tim and Dolly, you guys have been there. You've lived this. We talked a little bit about your journey to getting capital, but what have your meetings with mentors through the program been like? What have you taken away from those meetings and those conversations with people through the Brewing the American Dream program?
Yeah, a lot of what we've taken away is, a lot of the times we'd walk into places and really we're looking for one particular thing. And then from there, we would sign on to a newsletter, and that newsletter would send us emails about who's going to be into town, who's going to be into town and who's hosting what, for particular dates. And from that led to another resource and another door opening for us. And so for us, we're big into, as many mentors as we've had along the way, also being able to answer questions of veterans that walk in through our door that are interested in opening up a business, and being able to guide them and say, hey, we have worked with Accessity. If you haven't heard of them, please, go talk to this person. And, it's just an array of resources that, as Jennifer touched on earlier, it's not just for 1 year, it's a whole lifetime of, people that you get to meet that are able to provide help and resources and guide us in the right direction.
Tim and Dolly, what suggestions do you have for others who might want to replicate these programs, how they can make them better, and also for the brewers out there who want to apply for them so they can get the most out of them when they do apply and possibly get through them?
To make it better, you just got to get the word out. Part of the thing is that, let's say if you're trying to get BIPOC, you're trying to get women and people of color, you have to go into those communities and talk to them directly. So, I'm going to be honest, I don't spend a lot of time on Instagram and Facebook. So, but, ASEAN, which is, like I said, they call it Accessity now in San Diego, but a lot of places it's still called ASEAN. They go to those communities directly. So you have to work with those people that go to the people you're actually trying to get to, and so they can hear what you're doing and what you're offering. So if you're a big company, that's pretty much what you have to do, because a lot of us don't, a lot of those communities just don't watch the same thing as other communities is paying attention to. So, and you had a second part to that question. What was it?
How brewers who are in the programs can get the most out of them.
You could get a lot out of it. Like I think we said it already, it's a lifetime partnership. You could go from, I was having problems where when we first started canning, we just couldn't get the canning right. And then we contacted Sam Adams and they told us what to do. They put us in contact with whoever runs their canning operation. It was like, try this. We tried this. I haven't had no problems with my DL since. It's just simple things like that they can help you out with, and the coaching, and you can always reach out to someone who already been there, done that, and get the right answer that you're looking for. So that's very important.
So Jennifer, you mentioned how it's not just for a year, it's for a lifetime. So how do you facilitate that continued support for breweries once they've graduated from their experienceship year?
Yeah, you never really graduate. You're always in the family. But what we try to do is we lean in, and Tim and Dolly are so generous with their time to really utilize them as alumni. And I think when they're talking, it's one of the things. Not only do we have to reach folks who can use these resources, we have to figure out that, but also, anybody in here is running a brewery knows they wear many hats. Any food and beverage person wearing many hats. So sometimes the effort to think about what could I ask? I just don't have time. So it's us really leveraging folks like Tim and Dolly to say hey, could you talk to this other brewer? They want to talk about this, they're in your area. And then as they talk about the program, they realize how many free resources. I think that's the one thing is this is a free program. You don't have to have had a loan. You can be involved, and we just want to continue to bring those resources and utilize our alumni for that. We also want to provide the opportunity. We get interest in the program or opportunities. We want to bring them with us to talk about it, because word of mouth is always going to be better, and that sort of third-party validation is always better when people have been through the program. And as Tim mentioned, you really get what you put into it, right, with anything, and it's the same with this.
So I want to plug the text line one more time, 617-336-8560. That's 617-336-8560. We have a question for you, Mike. For Target Takeoff, how does this program work with national or regional purchasing decision makers?
Yes, that'll be a big part of it. You know, I think every retailer that's in BevElk operates a little differently, which those that are in the business know. Everyone, I think, is trying to figure out this journey where the beer industry in particular has gotten so hyper-local, right? It's not even a Minnesota IPA anymore. It's within the Twin Cities, my home market here. There's different IPAs for every single city that are going to over-index. And so I think working with the combination of the stores and the headquarters buying teams is just really understanding what that looks like by market. But I think we're all trying to figure out how to be, especially a retailer of Target scale, how to be locally relevant in every store that we're at. If it looks like I built the assortment from here in Minneapolis, it's not good. So really, I think partnering with stores, partnering with the brewers to understand where their guests are, where do they over-index, where are the places that are going to really be easy home runs, likely for the assortment and for the brands, and where are some other places that we need to test our way into, and how do we learn along the way.
Awesome. The last 2 years in the beer industry, I'm so sorry for the language, have been an entire unmitigated shit show. So, Jennifer, how have you noticed concerns of the entrepreneurs in the program? How have they changed in the past 2 years? You getting different questions? Are there different needs out there? What's different?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same things everyone's seeing or experiencing is around staffing. How do we not only get staffing, but how do we keep them? You know, I think, speaking from myself running a brewery for 21 years, you know, it was easy to get staffing 10 years ago, right? And now it's very hard to get staffing. So that's a big concern for our food and beverage entrepreneurs and breweries. I think, you know, capital, how do we get enough capital? How do we make sure we're not getting too much capital? You know, that's one great part about the program is making sure that you're being mentored in terms of your finances, scaling, what size, you don't want to not buy the right amount of equipment, but you don't want to go too big, right, if you don't need to. So those are some of the big ones. And really the biggest one that's happened to me over the past 24 months has been around pitching. I can barely get in to see my buyer. I have my mask on, like they can't see how excited I am. I have less than 2 minutes to give my pitch, right? So we've done a lot of pitching workshops. We've done our pitch room competitions virtually and in person. So I think that was really just honing in on that. And how do I sell my product when, to Mike's point, you could get 27 Minnesota IPAs right around here. How do I make sure mine's the one that stands out? So honing in that pitch and making sure they can really sell their story is really incredibly important.
Yeah. Mike, how have you noticed the last 2 years change in terms of what you're hearing from brands?
Oh man, I have not enjoyed the last 2 years. It's really changed everything we do. You think about, you would go to a trade show or a conference before and how many people you'd meet. And to your point, like what's going on in the market, right? So for our buying team that's been kind of locked in Minneapolis for the last couple of years, it's been really hard to find new ways to connect with brands and all of that. I think, pitching's gotten different, unique. How many on Zoom? How many coordinating someone sending me a sample and telling me if I have to refrigerate it or not before I open it later for our Zoom call. So I think it's changed quite a bit. I do think in this new kind of more digitally enabled world where we're on Zoom and on calls and connected a lot more, it is that short conversation. So I think a couple pieces of advice, whether talking to Target or any other retailer, I think it's always good to do your homework, understand the strategy of the company. Is it a fit or not? Don't go trying to knock down doors where it probably isn't a fit. Not a good use of your time. I think sharing the story, both the story behind the people behind the brands, and then where you've had success. So whether it's stats from your tap room, where you have distribution, where everything's going on, like what's the interesting part for a retailer to kind of have a reason to believe. And then from there, as I alluded to earlier, it gets into a lot of things that we try to build into the Accelerator program. And really any good relationship my team is building with a supplier is talking through all the logistics. What supply chain look like? What does marketing look like? What are all those facets of setting the brand up for success? I think at the end of the day, I don't want to launch, and I don't think anyone else wants to launch and get into a retailer and then be pulled out, 4-6 years later. We want to set it up for long-term success. So I think it's really that collaboration and partnership to get all those things in the right place. And then honestly, a lot of honest dialogue if certain facets of it aren't ready. So we don't have a great marketing plan, like let's hold, or let's test in a smaller set of stores and figure out how to scale it at the right time.
Tim and Dolly, you've graduated from the Brewing the American Dream program to mentor status. What are you hearing now from upstart breweries?
Yeah, one of the biggest questions we get asked is funding. You know, that I feel like that hasn't changed in terms of, you know, how do I find more resources? Where do I start? Where do I go? And so, you know, finding capital is probably one of the biggest things that we hear repeatedly.
That's a great one. And we just got a really great question come in the text line. With rising prices to produce beer, what ways have you seen upstart breweries generate other revenue streams from outside of beer sales? And really quick, if you do have a question, you want to sneak it in, 617-336-8560. I'm sure there's a lot of creativity out there. What have you guys all seen?
Well, for us, you know, we was just tap room only. We didn't do stores. We didn't even try to do anything outside the tap room. So once COVID hit, we quickly transitioned. We bought a canning machine. We started canning, went straight to stores, and that actually helped grow the business. So you see a lot of people transitioning, you know, more away from the tap room back into trying to figure out how to get their cans into the stores. If you're a small tap room, I always say try to control your backyard first before you try to, you know, for me, you know, I'm Chula Vista Brewery, so obviously my backyard is Chula Vista Brewery. So I just focus on Chula Vista Brewery and let it grow from there, and which it did. You also got people, you know, for a brewery, you know, your goal is not to sell merch, but it's not bad to try to sell merch. And then, like for us, because we was just a small brewery, you know, we started upgrading our website, and you started, you know, messing with the POS and getting so you could take cash faster and you could start shipping. So even for the smaller breweries, you just started doing a lot more that you really only thought people like Sam Adams was doing. You know, I remember ordering Sam Adams to my house, which I'm still trying to get her to send me some Utopia, but I haven't seen it yet.
I feel like we could make that happen for you. Please put this man on the Utopia.
She reminds me that she brewed it, but I still ain't seen it.
I got 5 bottles at home.
You know, but you just get creative. So a lot of smaller breweries have transitioned to things that you really only thought bigger breweries was doing, and it's been very successful for us and a lot of other breweries.
I mean, Jennifer, I know you and I used to work together at Sam Adams, as I'm sure you hear me say on the Brew Brand podcast all of the time, but you guys have done a great job at offering really specialized experiences that have helped drive some revenue. Can you share some of that wisdom? Because I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, and it really came from a personal just desire to have people see this beautiful barrel room I built down the beer cellar, and I was like, oh, how could we get a tour down there? So we started charging. We made a special cheese and beer pairing tour. And we looked around at what other tours were charging, just in general, not just breweries, and that's been a huge revenue generator. Not over the last 2 years, we're just reopening that again. So I definitely suggest people. Most people, I hate to generalize, but most people have been on a brewery tour if they have been interested in one, right? So your sort of regular brewery tour, it gives you an opportunity to elevate that, to charge people to come in. I would also say, you know, leverage partners for impact. You don't have to be the only one doing it, and if you're in your tap room. You know, we automatically go to charitable initiatives, which are incredible, huge part of my job. I love that. But there's also opportunities to partner with arts and music and things like that. So you don't have to be the one doing it all, but you could make some revenue stream off that too. So I think being very creative around that is really important right now.
Mike, we talk a lot about pitching you, but what are some mistakes you consistently see breweries / bev alc companies making that they can avoid?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing just goes back to transparency between a retailer and a brewery. I think, like anyone, if you're excited to get your product out there, you want to get it out there as fast as you can and as many places as you can. And I think some of the biggest disappointments we've had would be a time where it's a brand that's a fit for Target, we're really excited about it, and then we find something like we only have enough beer supply for the next 90 days and we don't have a replenishment strategy thereafter. So that's gonna lead to some guest disappointment down the line. So I think it's the transparency around where things are at. And then honestly, if a retailer, like Target, asks for more than you can do, being honest and say, like, we can't do 300 stores. We actually don't have a good distributor lined up in these states, and really scaling the launch and the kind of strategy with. So I think the failures all come from one of those factors kind of missing along the way would be my part one of the answer. And then part two, I think The last question we kind of talked about diversifying business models. So on and off premise, what's happening in your tap room? Cocktails to go have become a thing in the last couple of years. It's just really like, what is your total brand marketing plan? And what are you bringing for it? What does Target need to do? What does that collaboration look like? Because again, we don't just want to get the product on the shelf. We want to sell it, get repeat, create a lot of excitement around a brand.
Awesome. Tim and Dolly, Chula Vista is now on to the next phase of expansion. You guys have done so well over the past few years, and you're planning on brewing through AleSmith, your neighbor in San Diego. What does the next stage of growth look like for you, and how has it all been going?
My wife keeps tossing it to me. I think Mike brought up a good point, is being truthful about what scale you at and what you can do. So for us, what we did was, like when we did the Bedmo, we only gonna do these 2 stores. Pretty much if you wasn't in Chula Vista, we wasn't trying to deal with you. And the stores was okay with that. And then same thing with that, we got into Hyatt. Hyatt wanted us to do like all of California. And I'm like, no, we're gonna scale it back down to San Diego. They got us all the way up to Carlsbad, but I'm still like, I just don't want to do the drive.
That's fair.
But you have to be honest, what can you do? So, for us, as we trying to grow, we continue to grow, we realize that we don't make that much beer to give to everybody what they're asking for. So now we're going to team up with another brewery who has a little bit more space than us to brew more beer. And just focus that side of the house just on, shipping it out to the different places. What that provides for us, I don't have to spend millions of dollars to build a new brew house. And, I can still focus on, my side of the house, and I can still grow. Because what you don't want to be stuck as, for me and Dolly, we independent. We don't have a bunch of investors. We are our only 2 investors. So we don't have all these secret investors all over the place with us. So we don't want to try to drive ourselves in debt just to grow the business and say we got this big brewery. That's how some breweries get in trouble, too big, too fast. So we want to naturally grow, let it naturally happen, and let it be more organic instead of trying to force my beer down, if that community ain't ready for my beer, they're not ready for my beer. Which I think Mike kind of touched on a little bit. The craft beer, for me personally, I think it's more going to more neighborhoods type brewery styles. So a lot of neighborhoods now just want their beer, and when they go to the store, they just look for their neighborhood beers. And in San Diego, you could probably see it a lot. You see a lot of breweries come from out of town, and you'd be like, oh man, that's a great brewery, and then they fail. Well, because San Diego will only allow San Diego beer. I think that, we got about 4 or 5 breweries I could name that all failed, but they great breweries, but, you're not a neighborhood brewery. So, I think a lot of breweries are starting to figure that, even the San Diego breweries, because you got big breweries in San Diego that branched out, and you start hearing about, oh man, they just failed. Well, how did they fail? Well, they left San Diego and they started doing all this other craziness. So, focus on yourself first, focus on your backyard. Don't try to go take over somebody else's neighborhood because there's somebody already there. And I think that's the great thing about craft beer, is that it's really community-based. So, and if you stay true to that and let it naturally grow, eventually you could get as big as Sam Adams maybe, but, for the rest of us, we just got to play our part. So that's what we done, and that's what we're going to continue to go do. Hopefully one day I'm in the Target. Y'all only got 1, so I only want to get in that 1.
I think we know a guy.
Right.
I was waiting the whole panel for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
It's the easiest setup. So
I like to toss my darts.
I mean, you waited like 25 minutes.
I did.
So,
I did. I waited for the right time. Right. So.
Shoot your shot.
Yeah. So that for me, that's how we grow, and that's how we've been successful. So.
Mike, speaking of shooting shots, like, we know you're hearing pitches on everything at this point. What do you want to be pitched on at this point? What do you not want to be pitched on?
Well, that's a great question. Wow. Again, like, we're trying to do a lot more in the last couple of years. I think we've always tried to articulate our unique strategy and what we want to do with our assortment. I've really tried to scale that up and be even more overt to answer that question as a leading indicator of, like, hey, if you're hearing this and this sounds like you should be calling us. And we're looking for you too, by the way. I was talking to a couple people before the first session, and this whole world of like, how do you connect with people? And we were talking about, do you try to use a service? Do you just randomly ping people on LinkedIn? How do you get in? So for us, curated, differentiated, really big commitment. We want to be hyper-local in all the markets that we're at. And we really want to celebrate a lot of things that the industry is not doing with female-owned brands, black-owned brands. So those are some of the things that we're looking to over-invest and over-index. The other part of the question on not want to see the same old ideas that haven't worked. So if we had something in distribution a couple years ago and we pulled it mutually because it wasn't working, why are we talking about it again? Unless there is a reinvent, new plan, something of that nature.
Before we wrap up, Jennifer, how can breweries find out more information about Brewing the American Dream?
I'm so glad you asked. You can go to brewingtheamericandream.com, or there's a link from our Sam Adams website. I will say, if you're interested in unique capital, Brewing the American Dream, we have nonprofit lending partners. We've lent in the past 14 years $75 million. So through our partners throughout the country. So please, if you're looking to expand, you can go in there for that. We also have a ton of free resources, both online and, of course, we're back in person. So we'll be hosting some pitch rooms and speed coaching around. And I will say, just a plug, there's a gentleman here in the back, I won't name him, but he came to one of my first coaching events in Denver, Colorado, and then subsequently told me he quit his job at the next JBF. And I was like, oh shit, what did I do? And now he's an amazing brewer, and he's been in the industry for a long time. So, I just like, it's kind of cheesy, but like, we're all in this awesome industry, and anything we can do to help people grow their business, follow their passion, that's what we're here to do. So thank you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much. This is really great. Everybody at home will be back in a couple minutes. Everybody in the room, let's go get a beer.
If you're an alcohol supplier, you have one goal: to sell more liquid. You work hard to train your team how to sell your product, while the sales manager sets high goals for revenue and product placements. Your craft deserves more than the perfect sales pitch. Executing an efficient field strategy is a top priority to reach expected growth and margins. Get ready to arm your sales team with not only your product knowledge, but the ability to execute a field strategy that will keep you ahead of your competition. Lillypad was built to elevate sales team performance, giving your team the tools and resources they need, while providing you visibility into their day-to-day activity. Meet Peter Parker, sales rep. He's passionate about your product. With a little more organization and a view into market data, he can get more commitments for product placements and see them through. The Lillypad map highlights customers and prospects for Peter, where they are located, which to visit, and which need follow-up, so he can plan his day efficiently and focus on the most profitable opportunities. Peter is well prepared when he arrives at a customer location. Using Lillypad's account profile feature, Peter knows who he needs to talk to, the location sales history, status of product commitments and placements, and which distributors they use to purchase alcohol. While Peter is visiting his customer, he can suggest the right products he knows will sell based on market data insights. Today, Peter easily lands a tap handle commitment and will track the fulfillment process using Lillypad. He can also log his visit notes into the profile, where he and his manager can easily analyze progress by account, brand, and SKU. Peter had a successful week, and tracking the progress of his placements has never been easier. Lillypad automates time-consuming processes, helping Peter make the most of every route and every visit. Your number one priority is to sell more liquid. Visit us today at lillypad.co and see what Lillypad can do for your business.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Brew Talks for our third and final panel presented by Dogfish Head and Lillypad. Thank you guys for coming back. So excited to close this out with you all. Our next panel is very exciting. In the pursuit of collaboration, community, and bettering craft beer, Haymarket Brewing in Chicago hosted a 6-week residency program earlier this year. And that featured Black-owned beer companies, including Turner House, Black Horizon, Harold's, Funky Town, and Moor's. The program gave brewers the chance to form meaningful connections with both drinkers and industry members while introducing new consumers to what's happening in craft. So, joining us today for a conversation about that program and how to create community in unexpected ways we have Damon Patton and Jamal Johnson, both co-founders of Moor's Brewing Company. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Oh, thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks for being
Thank
here.
you, thank you.
And then we have Samuel Ross, co-founder of the Harold's 83 Honey Ale brand and a brewer at Goose Island.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. And finally, we have Mike Gemma, who's director of operations at Haymarket.
Hello.
Or Haymarket, excuse me. Thank you guys all for being here. I think before we start, we got to plug the text line one more time. If you don't have it memorized by now, write it down. It is 617-336-8560. Text any questions you have there. Again, that's 617-336-8560. So I think the best way to start this off is Mike and Sam. To tell the story of how this residency came to be at Haymarket, we have to tell the story of Harold's 83. So how did this collaboration beer get going? How did that start?
It was right around the time of the Brewers Association's benchmark study on the demographic breakdown of ownership of breweries in the United States, about 2018, 2019. And it showed that there were less than 1% African-American owned breweries, less than 1% African-American brewers in the United States. And it was kind of around that conversation point with a mutual friend of Sam's counterpart, Jay, about another piece of information in the Chicagoland area that was astounding to us. In a town of 2.7 million people, with a third of whom are African Americans, only about 9 liquor store licenses were held by African Americans. And that just didn't seem right. So in that conversation, a mutual friend turned me on to an introduction with Jay Westbrook, Sam's counterpart and co-founder of Harold's 83 Honey Ale. And we just sat down and had a conversation. And he was an inspiring brewer, but kept getting told no because he didn't have enough experience yet in the game. So we said, well, what do you want to brew? We have a brew pub, we have this opportunity, and what would you like to make? And he said, well, we can't do this without my friend Sam. So Sam and Jay came to us and said, hey, we want to make this beer. I'll turn it over to him, though, on the beer part.
When the opportunity came to me, I was an aspiring brewer. I was at a 3-barrel place. So like my brothers down at Van, you know, it's hard work in a craft beer brewery of that size or growing that size. And when they gave me opportunity to work on a big system, I really gave that recipe to heart. And then we wanted to tell a story. Haymarket Brew Pub, before we came along, always focused on African American and being in the city. They had a Chicago Defender Stout. So when it came to me to write a recipe or think about writing a recipe, I knew I couldn't just have a cool name. I wanted to be historic, and that's how Harold Washington, the first black mayor of Chicago, was elected in 1983. And if you've been to Chicago before, shout out to my man Dom that's sitting around here. We're known for our pizza, but we're really known for our chicken wings and a place called Harold's Chicken Wing where we argue who has the best location, right, my man from Reyes? So I tried to combine the two, and this is where we're at.
And I know the ingredient in the honey ale has a really cool story behind it. Do you want to share that with everybody?
The honey is from our neighborhood. I live in the Lawndale neighborhood, which is economically growing, but urban neighborhood, and apiaries just aren't there. So to have this one, to have a local apiary that lives in my neighborhood, and we're connected to them, and we go by and we buy their products and we visit the bees, and it's just community, right?
And an apiary is where bees live. I did not know that until we started talking to these guys for this panel. But Sam, the Harold's collaboration really opened some doors for you, and I think your career path is really inspiring to a lot of other people. So can you tell us about how you got to be where you are right now?
Oh yeah, I'm glad you opened it up. So the last 2 years was a shit show for y'all. It was probably the best 2 years of my life. You know what I'm saying? The day that I interviewed to be a brewer at Goose Island, I was on the front page of the Sun Times. So when they was like, "Hey Sam, we want to have you. You got the passion. We'll teach you how to brew. We can teach anyone how to brew." And I was like, "Yo, I'm not just anybody. I represent this collaboration here. I represent these gentlemen. I represent Mike. I represent a lot." So it's like, no, you're gonna teach me the right way. And so I started off as a brand ambassador. Then I became a brewer, doing 50-barrel turns at 312. And then when my career, I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, big beer ain't such a bad thing. I make Bourbon County Stout, and so I wanted to have my career zoned in on the barreling program and writing recipes of being barrel-aged beers.
Well, congratulations on all of that. That's so exciting.
Thank you.
Good for you, man. So then, Mike, after this happened, what inspired you to turn your taproom into this residency program for Chicago Black-owned breweries?
So as we were developing and turning out the very first batch of Harold's 83 Honey Ale at the Brew Pub, which was going to be a draft-only offering, it all started kind of towards the end of 2019, and then it was really ready right when the world shut down. It sucked in the sense of we had all these grand plans of the party and a panel discussion on diversity within the craft beer space that we were going to host at the Brew Pub. We pivoted that to online, and while that was decently attended, the beer itself, through Sam and Jay's perseverance and passion for the project, it ended up being our third best-selling beer in growlers to go during the pandemic shutdown. But we felt like it was just not enough. There was something left on the table for us to be able to go after and continue on and make it better. And we said, how do you pandemic-proof a beer at a brew pub? You put it into a can. And so we went down that path. We let them create the label, and we introduced them to our distribution partners and the sales team, and we helped along the concept from an idea to putting it on the shelf.
Awesome. Jamal and Damon, can you set the stage a little bit for us about Moor's? Like, how old is the brewery? What do you guys specialize in? Tell us a little bit about the company.
You want to take that one? You want me to?
Sure. Moor's Brewing Company was launched last year, so we're about 10 months old. We're approaching our 1-year anniversary next month, so we'll be 11 months old this month. But my brother Damon had an idea to do craft beer. We've always been, business and entrepreneur lovers. We've always done other things, but his beer idea, I think, came at a perfect time for us. The timing was perfect. So he called me, said we should do craft beer because he had just delivered. I'll allow him to tell the story, but once he called me and said that, as a craft beer fan and consumer, I immediately started thinking about how we could do it differently because it would take a little difference, I thought, to make some impact from a diversity, equity, and inclusion standpoint. So we started there as a foundation, I guess, to build a brand and be brand forward to kind of like resonate with the target market that we were, pursuing. And I'll allow Damon to tell a quick little story about how he called me, actually, to
Yeah, I mean, just really quickly, I was living in Miami, Florida. I moved down there in 2003, and I moved back to Chicago to found this company with my brother. But down there, I had a consultation business working with restaurants, bars, and hotels. I was working with the Michelin-starred restaurant group back in Chicago, who we will remain nameless right now. But yeah, I worked with those guys, and then I took the knowledge I kind of got from them and went down to Miami and sold it. I had a consultation business that talked with restaurants, bars, and hotels about how to kind of improve their steps of service and just be better restaurants. When COVID came, they shut down all the bars, restaurants, hotels in Miami, and I found myself having to reinvent myself. So sat on the couch for about 2 weeks, like bleaching the walls and the doorknobs and the light switches, and going crazy in the house, watching like I Love Lucy reruns and all type of stupid but I just couldn't do it anymore. I'm not a kind of sit on the couch guy. So I actually started driving Uber, and I didn't want to use my car, so I rented one of theirs. And they give you like, a Hyundai Sonata or something like that. And I drove for like 2 days, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to. People are in the car, they're coughing, like all type of wild shit. I was like, yo, it's just not working out. So then from there, kind of, I tried to take the car back. I was like, all right, I'm done. I can't be an Uber driver. It's not for me. And he was like, well, you have to keep the car for 30 days. Like, you're paying for it for 30 days. And I'm like, okay, so what am I going to do with this Hyundai Sonata now, And I decided to deliver for Uber Eats just because I didn't have people in the car, and that worked out for me. I ended up doing a delivery for a liquor store down there, and, I picked up like 15 cases of beer, but it was like, natural ice and like, Coors Light and, whatever. So I'm thinking I'm going to like some white toga party, like bunch of kids that I'm gonna deliver this stuff to. And I'm on Miami Beach, and I roll up to this like manse, like, on the water, and like the iron gates and everything is huge. And the gates open, and there's a bunch of black people inside, and they're about, maybe 20, 30 couples. They're having a pool party. And I'm still super confused because I've been to a bunch of parties with black people, and I've never seen anyone drinking a natural ice. So I was like, okay, what is going on here? So, we're unloading the car, and a guy comes over, he's helping me unload the stuff. And so I'm, automatically like, so is this beer for you guys? Like, and he's like, yeah, like, and, I keep unloading stuff, and like the last one I'm carrying in, I'm like, yo, so where are you guys from, And they're like, Louisville, and I'm Louisville, right? So I'm like, maybe I just missed a whole faction of blackness that I didn't really know about before, being in Chicago and Miami and New York and Atlanta and LA and all these other places. And I've never been to Louisville, so I've never seen black people drinking beer like this. Now, my father was a huge beer drinker. I mean, we would go to Comiskey Park there in Chicago, and I was telling these guys, he played a beer game. So the beer game was you drink every pitch, like, and he would go through. They stopped serving in the 7th inning. My dad would drink 10 beers, like, what I'm saying? So it was I come from a beer drinking, household, and I just never saw him drink a natural ice or a Coors Light or the kind they were drinking. But after having that experience, I drove away from that house, and I thought to myself, maybe we could sell black people some beer. And that was where I was at the time. So I thought about it, I started looking up a little bit, and I called my brother, and I said, dude, I think we can start a beer company. He called me back like 4:30 the next morning. He's like, we're gonna start a beer company, and we're gonna name it Moor's. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what we're gonna do. And that's kind of how it went,
Awesome. So what were your first thoughts when you heard about the residency?
For us, just starting out, I think the residency opportunity came about in our like 8th or 9th month, and it was during Black History Month. So for us, it was a great opportunity for a couple reasons. One, it was a great opportunity for us to network and connect with some of the other black brewers in Chicago, and just to leverage their expertise and see what their motivations were, and just to create some synergies there. But additionally, we were targeting, to be quite frank, we were targeting the Fulton Market District in Chicago, which is where Haymarket is located. And we were, targeting that area for a few accounts. The area has a great, it's a bubbling area for, young professionals. So we were targeting that area. And we saw it as a great opportunity to not only work with the other black brewers, but and Haymarket has a great reputation in Chicago as well. So we thought it was just opportunistic. We thought it was a chance to get our product in front of people that may not have heard of us yet. We saw it as a chance to grow.
Yeah, we were in about, just really quickly, we were in about 7 Michelin star restaurants in Chicago, and the Fulton Market District had like 5 of our restaurants. So for Mike to come and say, hey, we want to have you guys do something here in Haymarket, I'm like, shit, that's in Fulton Market too. Like, we got to do it, It was kind of that way.
So what are the kinds of things that you guys did as a brewery to take full advantage of this residency and this takeover?
Sure, we leveraged our expertise in event planning and things like that, right? So with Haymarket being in the prime area in Fulton Market District, we thought it was a great opportunity to bring our crowd to that area, leverage the space for a great event. So we did, I think we ideated about 4 events at Haymarket during the residency. We started with a house music event. House music is pretty big in Chicago. I believe Haymarket is actually located on International House Music DJ Row or something like that.
Yeah, DJ International, which is
there we go. I had it
company
wrong.
That helped.
Hey, there we go.
Launch
An
it.
address.
Yeah, so we started with house music. In addition to the dance party, we also showed a documentary on the history of house music in Chicago. So just trying to
A resounding success, by the way.
Incorporate some education in with some partying. We also collaborated with the other black brewers with Sam's recipe called the Chicago Uncommon. We launched that on the Super Bowl Sunday. So that was great. And we also did a couple happy hours and a NBA All-Star event there. So we did we took advantage of Haymarket Brewery. So thanks, Mike.
Mike, what did other breweries do with the space during those 6 weeks?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
So other brewers that participate in here, Funky Town held a couple of events, one of which was a game night, and it was a celebration of community around those games. Bones and Spades played dominoes and played a lot of hip-hop, R&B, just about the culture and made it their own space. And that was kind of the target and the goal of the residency for these events was to make the space your own, because 3 of the 4 entities don't have their own brick and mortars. And as they were saying, we are in a very hot neighborhood in Chicago for bars and restaurants, and that type of exposure was something that we could offer up for all of these brands. Even in the educational side, I mean, Sam and Jay partnered with Mickey Bryant from Black and Brew Chicago. Black and Brew Chicago being a non-for-profit educational organization in craft beer space, trying to educate and promote inclusivity around the craft beer space for minority consumers.
Just a little shout out to Funky Town, who won our Brewbound Live 2021 Pitch Slam.
Big up to those
Shout out
guys.
to Funky Town.
Shout out.
So Sam, what's next for Harold's?
What's next for Harold's? That's a great question that we send emails about every day, text messages, and like people are asleep, and it's also a constant thing. With me being in Big Beer, being in 312 Goose Island, you can go to certain neighborhoods, you can turn a corner, it's 312 on that place, 312 there, 312 there. I just want Harold's 83 to be just Big Beer. I want to take the motto of that, but also within Big Beer, when things are opening back up, I want to go back to the lounges and the clubs, not just necessarily the tap rooms. Like I was talking to this gentleman right here, we're from the same neighborhood, and it's like, yo, I want to go back to that neighborhood. We can. Those small places, those small communities, they're like, yo, this is one of your sons. I'm one of your own, So get some Harold's 83, honey ale.
Mike, will Haymarket do this again in the future? And have you seen a halo effect with new customers visiting Haymarket?
To the latter question, yes, absolutely. We've gotten such great feedback from the residency program that we're actually carrying all of the breweries that participated. All of their beers are continually offered at the brew pub because of that demand. as far as doing it again next year, we're constantly in talks, and that was always the intention with this, to not just be a one and done deal, but to evolve it and to continue to work together, to continue to be resources for one another, to collaborate and build it possibly in a different fashion or in the same likeness on the beer side, but just foster community.
And just one last plug for that text line. If you have any final questions for our panelists, that's 617-336-8560. Damon and Jamal, as the founders of this new beer company, what lessons did you learn during this residency that you're going to bring into the continued growth of your brand?
I would definitely have to say the power of collaboration, to strengthen numbers. I think we just to measure the impact of the residency and the collaboration with Haymarket and the other brewers. I believe we were probably at in our beer was being carried in 1 or 2 locations in the Fulton Market District, but after I think we're in like 11 in the area now. So that's been impactful for us. Like I said, it opened doors for us that we were already knocking on. It just helped that door kind of completely open. The media and PR that was done surrounding the collaboration was definitely huge for us. So we leveraged it quite well. We ended up in the United Center after it, so we loved it. We loved it. We intend to continue collaborating with, the Black brewers in Chicago as well as Haymarket and everyone, So I would say the biggest lesson was the power of collaboration and how far it could take you. Just being able to be in front of people that, you may not have the opportunity to otherwise be in front of. So that's the one biggest takeaway for me.
I mean, I guess for me, that takeaway is huge as well. I mean, we have, like my brother said, we were talking to the United Center for probably 3 months, maybe 2 or 3 months, then we get our picture in the paper, and all of a sudden, they're calling us. So it's like a whole different thing. I think other than that power of a collaboration, it would be just kind of the scalability thing, because of the demand, we need more beer. I mean, one thing that's been really kind of prevalent in each one of the African-American owned breweries that we're seeing around the country is that not many of them have their own facility. And that's something we definitely are working hard to kind of correct on our end there in Chicago and the Midwest. But yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing, that taking care of the demand once you create it is like the whole game, really.
I mean, and just to add really quickly to that, I think that's a big problem that we, as Damon stated, we intend to correct, because I think the lack of space and, it really affects your business when you work so hard to create the demand, right? And when you can't get back into the tanks to produce at the level that you've created, it could kill your business. So to alleviate that, we're working very hard to get, a facility, actually the largest facility in America.
Right. The thing is, now we've seen these $8-9 million facilities. We come at this as neophytes. We launched on Juneteenth of last year. Like you said, this is our 10th month of operation. So I'm thinking, all right, I need a couple million. We'll build a nice place, And I'm walking in places like, nah, and now you see a Lamborghini, and then they want you to go hop in a Corolla and be okay, driving home. It's just not, it's not going to happen. Now I need $10 million for my facility. So that, so it's
no, I
learn, you grow.
Yeah. Just like the facility standpoint, I think that will eliminate, just my thinking, will eliminate a lot of the problems and will help a lot of the minority-owned brewers grow. Just for example, in Illinois, like I said, if we were able to have a space, we would, commit to making beer for all of the minority beer owners in Chicago, in Illinois, and abroad. Wherever actually. We want to create something, more than just a flash in the pan type of thing. We want to grow the space. We believe that, being brand forward, with our brand and of course producing great juice will grow the space, not just from a manufacturer standpoint, but from a consumer standpoint. And so far, it's really worked well for us. So we want to definitely prove concept further in Illinois and take our show on the road. So we expect great things in the future.
Just wanted to let everyone know that Funky Town Brewing is watching, and they wanted to say hello and what's up, especially to our
What's up,
panel.
brothers?
What up? Was that Z and Rich watching? I'm guaranteed.
To just wrap this up, it's when we think about these programs, it's definitely like easy to think about what like the craft beer industry would look like if there's these programs in more cities, both behind the scenes and just the consumer base. So, Mike, if you want to start, and if anyone else has some final words on it, just what advice would you give to people who are looking to replicate this program?
Invite and then listen, because there are a lot of goals, desires that people have that they're wanting to take part, and we have the ability, when we're already established, to hand it over, really, and give them that experience and let them participate at that level, and just be the friend. Just be there, guide them along, and be that resource.
I would say that if you're hosting and you plan on just following our example, our lead, thank you. Just know that we're all different. You know, there's diversity within diversity. My goals are totally different from Damon and Jamal's, and we understand that. You know, like, but our same goal is to grow the 1% to 2% to 3% to 4% to have a bigger part of the market. So if you're going to emulate this program, or just know that, like, hey, one guy's a shift brewer, but the collaboration let me write as a writer, as gave me an opportunity to do something that maybe is below my pay grade at Goose Island. But to my brothers, they say, hey, Sam, we trust you, man. Like, yo, you want to sign off on this? Go right ahead. And then with that, it's like, hey, I wrote the juice, can you sell it? And that's when Damon and Jamal come in. And then there's Jay, he has another thing with the media and how do we get back to community and charitable. So we're all different. It's diversity within diversity. So when you pull DEI on, just know we're all different and have different goals.
Yeah, I think I might occur. There you go. There you go, bro. All right, there we go. Just really quick. I think it's important to continue this program in other places. I think other, large brew houses in other cities should definitely reach out to the African American and brown brewers in their state, in their city, to do similar things. Just being able to have access and visibility, actually, I think is important, not just to them, but to the community at large. It pretty much opens up the beer space or the craft beer space to African Americans and brown people as career paths, and understanding that there's many different roles that work together to make this great thing, come about, and this finished product, right? Understanding that there's there's art and creativity in the recipe crafting. One of our biggest things is to pair. We make our beer to pair well with food, right? Much like wine makers. We think that's a big area that hasn't been exploited to the fullest. We think we can grow the space there. There's a ton of ideas and ton of creativity, I think, that comes from collaborating. I think, just really quick, I think being more welcoming as well, right? I think, for us, we wanted to be unapologetic and leaning into the culture with our brand. I think a lot of our counterparts and cohorts that look like us want to do the same thing, but maybe a little afraid, because the existing industry don't look really welcoming. And I was speaking to my friends today about that, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's not welcoming. It just doesn't appear to be so, right? And so I think, you know, the industry at large could use a bit of a facelift, and so just some engaging in new creative ideas to grow the space. So, and to do that, you have to include more people. And I think there's a lane for us and for everyone. And I think you should continue to exploit it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just kind of add to what Jamal. Yeah, clap. Let's clap. That's fine. Just kind of to add on to what my brother said. I mean, like, you know, there's two options here. I mean, we're new to the space. We're complete neophytes. I don't know any of you guys. You know what I mean? This is my first CBC. I love meeting everybody. But what I'm kind of, it can stay homogenous. You know, we can have a universe of sameness in craft beer for the next, I mean, you know, what, Schlitz and Pabst and the best started in 1844. So we're talking about 180 years of this industry kind of being the same, you know? And I think the pervasive sentiment right now is that it needs to change. And I like seeing the progression. And just as my brother was saying, it's, you know, you walk in a room sometimes like, all right, you know, we're raising in a bowl of milk again. That's, you know, we're expecting that. But what I have been very happy about seeing is just how inclusive, just how receptive everyone has been. You know, we haven't really run into a bunch of haters, you know. Everybody, I mean, you know, we got a black man on a beer can, and that was something I thought was going to be a lot more galvanizing than it's happened to be. People are resonating to our imagery and our messaging, and we are really leaning into our culture to kind of make sure that there is some diversity in this industry, and that's what we're trying to do. So just to kind of, you know, coattail ride on what my brother said here, I think if, you know, our true allies in the space make themselves known and just kind of listen, as Mike was saying, to what we're trying to tell you we need, which is a fucking facility, quite frankly. Like, you know, I mean, if we listen to what is absolutely necessary for the people that are trying to diversify this particular industry, and we make sure that those things are available to them, I think we'll have what we want, which is a diverse industry that is not just making the same kind of sameness over and over again for the next 200 years, you know?
Awesome. I mean, that's a perfect place to leave it. Guys, I can't wait to hear about the next residency program next year. Mike, you said we're going to do it again, so I look forward to coming out to visit. This has been great. Thank you all so much for being here. Before we land this plane, a huge thank you to our sponsors, Dogfish Head, Lillypad, and Compass. Oh.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us.
Scott Laboratories, the Reyes Beer Division, Omega Engineering, Vicinity Brew, and Brew One, Spectrum, Azaka, and Spectrum. I said that already, and one more hop that I'm forgetting by the Barth Haas Group. Thank you. Eclipse. Woo! It's been a day. Thank you all so much for watching at home. Thank you all for being here. Can't wait to hang out and have some more beers now that...
Thank you guys for a great interview.
Thank you. And if you're watching on the live stream, you can watch a replay if you missed any of our panels earlier today.
Everything will be at brewbound.com. And now I really need a beer.
Moors.
Let's drink.
Thank you.
If you're an alcohol supplier, you have one goal: to sell more liquid. You work hard to train your team how to sell your product, while the sales manager sets high goals for revenue and product placements. Your craft deserves more than the perfect sales pitch. Executing an efficient field strategy is a top priority to reach expected growth and margins. Get ready to arm your sales team with not only your product knowledge, but the ability to execute a field strategy that will keep you ahead of your competition. Lillypad was built to elevate sales team performance, giving your team the tools and resources they need, while providing you visibility into their day-to-day activity. Meet Peter Parker, sales rep. He's passionate about your product. With a little more organization and a view into market data, he can get more commitments for product placements and see them through. The Lillypad map highlights customers and prospects for Peter, where they are located, which to visit, and which need follow-up, so he can plan his day efficiently and focus on the most profitable opportunities. Peter is well prepared when he arrives at a customer location. Using Lillypad's account profile feature, Peter knows who he needs to talk to, the location's sales history, status of product commitments and placements, and which distributors they use to purchase alcohol. While Peter is visiting his customer, he can suggest the right products he knows will sell based on market data insights. Today, Peter easily lands a tap handle commitment and will track the fulfillment process using Lillypad. He can also log his visit notes into the profile where he and his manager can easily analyze progress by account, brand, and SKU. Peter had a successful week, and tracking the progress of his placements has never been easier. Lillypad automates time-consuming processes, helping Peter make the most of every route and every visit. Your number one priority is to sell more liquid. Visit us today at lillypad.co and see what Lillypad can do for your business.